Hello, everybody. Brian Tulsa here. We have covered a lot of really heavy topics on this channel for the last few weeks. In fact, it seems like it's been a while since there has been a truly joyful topic. And you may be asking yourself, where is the joy? Where is the fun? Well, the answer is it's here. It's right under the surface. And in fact, I am bursting with joy and optimism that I want to express to you, and I will. But there are also serious and important things going on, and I'm not going to ignore those things. The joy, the fun that we're going to have, as important as it is, pales in comparison to bombs being dropped and blowing up people, diseases spreading, and taking family members away from their loved ones and disrupting lives. Those things are more important than going to a museum. Although going to a museum is not unimportant, it is also important. So we're going to do both. I don't really believe in escapism. And I say that as someone who has produced a lot of content that would be considered escapist by a lot of people. But I never approach it that way when I'm looking at these science fiction and action adventure properties that I enjoy. I never disconnect myself from the real world in order to enjoy them. I may enjoy Star Trek, but I am not imagining myself in a world of Starfleet. It just, for me, it just doesn't work that way. That's not something that I need. That's not something that I desire. That's not something that I admire. I can appreciate the work that goes into creating these fantasy universes and making coherent worlds with lore and backstory, and I can admire all of that, but it all still exists, the creation of it and the consumption of it in this world, and none of it for me provides any kind of escape. Uh, and and I don't really want it to. As an adult, I've never looked for that. I don't want to escape from the world that we're in, as harsh and difficult as it may be. What happens to a fantasy character is less important than what happens to a real person. And that I can't approach it any other way. I don't want to approach it any other way. What I'm thinking about is Gene Simmons recently making a statement to the effect that rock musicians should stop making political statements and just play their songs. Which, first of all, that is a political statement. And second of all, no. The idea that art is just a product to consume just misunderstands what it is. And yes, even from a musician who ought to know better, um, the idea that there's some like objective value to something based on how many people consume it and how much money it makes, and that should be the focus rather than whatever the art actually has to say, is just a fundamental misunderstanding of what art is and what it does. And I have no interest in that at all. For that reason, I don't have a lot of sympathy for people who complain about the real world invading their escapist space. These things are created in the same world that we're occupying by people who also occupy the same world in which we live. None of them are really disconnected from the political and social realities of the time and place in which they're created. The idea that these things are created independent of the political and social realities of the world in which they're made is also a fantasy. That's a fantasy world on top of another fantasy world, and I'm just not going to follow you down that rabbit hole. I think that if you are using these things as an escape in a way that makes you less capable of dealing with those realities and accepting the the facts that may be uncomfortable to you, those things are not helping you cope. They are making things worse for you. Something that helps you cope is something that helps you be more able to deal with those things, not less. The world is not something to be escaped. The world is something to be experienced. The world is something to be studied and understood, and that's what we're going to do. And within that world, there are um, a lot of bad things, a lot of trauma, um, a lot of catastrophe, and a lot of joy. And the joy is there. The joy is here. The joy is present, and we are going to uh, go on those adventures together, and it's going to be a blast. And you're going to smile. You're going to laugh. I'm going to smile. I'm going to laugh and make a lot of dumb jokes, but we're not going to ignore everything else in order to do it. And that's just how it's going to be. Uh, we're going to do all of those things at the same time because we live in a world where all of those things exist at the same time. So join me if you wish. If you don't, I'm going to do it anyway. And in the meantime, Brian out.